Furiosa is not doing well at the box office. I gave my thoughts on the movie last night. I don't know if you guys heard. I was on Tony's live stream last night. I'll link to that. I can't believe it's been 12 hours since that live stream. Wow. So I already talked about my thoughts on it. You haven't seen it yet.
No.
My impression is you're not exactly rushing out the door to go see this movie. You're not feeling as hyped for this as you did Fury Road. Is that accurate?
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out, and that's the impression I get from a lot of people. And so I'm trying to figure out, why is this not doing very well at the box office? Now, the first thing, which I didn't realize, in my mind, Fury Road was like a big smash hit. Apparently it wasn't. Like, it did surprisingly well, but it wasn't like huge. So it had an opening weekend of $45 million. Furiosa had an opening weekend of $25 million. And then Fury Road went on to make $380 million, which apparently means it like broke even. Some people say it might have even lost money, which is weird because then Furiosa gets an even bigger budget. So Fury Road's budget was $150 million, Furiosa $168 million. So they upped the budget by close to $20 million. But they're calling it a flop, and everything is flopping right now. The Fall Guy, If, Garfield, Furiosa. There's a couple theories on why that's happening. So part of this is fallout from the writer's strike and the director's strike. So a lot of bigger movies are delayed, and maybe they would have released some more surefire hits. So like Memorial Day weekend, usually by that point, there's a big movie out. Like last year, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 came out a couple weeks before that. I think 2022, Top Gun Maverick was out in time for Memorial Day weekend. In previous years, there were X-Men movies, Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So, I mean, now you have Furiosa, an R-rated, kind of weird prequel movie. So I think that's all part of it. But also, just in the face of it, like I look at you, you loved Fury Road, and you're not that excited for this.
So I'm trying to think out loud here about why that is. I think there's a couple reasons. One, I like Furiosa's character, but personally, I would prefer another Mad Max movie with Mad Max because that's what the movie is, and that's who I primarily cared about. So I do care about Furiosa, but not as much. So I'd rather have a sequel to Max's story. However, I do still want to see the movie. So I'm at least somewhat excited. I'm not excited at all. When I saw the trailer, I didn't really notice anything that was significantly different from the first movie. So my vibe, and maybe I might be wrong, but my impression was it looks like the same movie, but I've already seen it, and it doesn't look as intense as the first movie. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's false memory from the trailer because it was a while ago. But what do I need to see the same movie for with a character I'm not as interested in?
And a character whose fate you already know. You kind of know her backstory to some extent already, or you get an idea where she's coming from. So it's played by a different actress.
Yeah.
So I feel like I second a lot of what you just said. Like that trailer, I remember when we saw the trailer for Fury Road, we were already quoting, "What a lovely day."
Yeah.
And we're still quoting it 9 years later. And just the visual of them driving into that giant storm and like the crazy orchestral music playing over it, I remember feeling like I need to see this movie. Furiosa trailer never gave me that feeling. And my theory is that Mad Max is a weird movie. If you think about the normies, I feel like most of them wouldn't usually be into a Mad Max movie, but it became somewhat of a cultural phenomenon because A, that trailer was just so good, you had to see it. And then there was the word of mouth from critics telling you this is something crazy, you haven't seen this stuff before. It's some of the best action ever.
I'm also speculating here, but I feel also back then when Mel Gibson was Mad Max, I think people cared more about big time celebrities and they cared more about going to see them. I think now you hear like who's in Chris Hemsworth? No. Yeah,
Chris Hemsworth.
Or was
yeah.
it wasn't his brother?
No, it's Chris Hemsworth
Okay.
and Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah, so I think they're big celebrities, but I think people just don't care as much anymore. Like hearing that Brad Pitt's going to be in a movie isn't necessarily going to make everyone go see it no matter what it is anymore. I think back then, you hear Mel Gibson's in a new movie, I want to go see
Yeah.
it.
Now, I think in general, I don't think you're necessarily wrong, but with Mad Max at least, it was so early in Mel Gibson's career. He was 22, I think, for the first one. So I don't think he was ever, maybe for Thunderdome by that point he might have
Fair
been a
point.
draw. But also none of those movies actually did that well. I think they generally would be considered sort of cult hits.
So
But they
you
were
let
also
me
low
go
budget
on
back then.
speculating for like 3 minutes when you knew I was wrong the whole time.
Well, I think maybe you were making a good point, though. I think you might be right. I know for me personally, like a big celebrity is definitely not a draw at all. I don't. The only time I care at all about an actor being in a movie is if I get the feeling this is an actor who's really protective over the movies they're in.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, I'm interested not because the actor's in it, but because they're acting as more than just in their capacity as an actor.
I mean, generally now I'm more interested in a movie if there's nobody I know in it and it looks cool. And that's it. Celebrities are almost distracting now.
Yeah. Kind of like Anya Taylor-Joy in Dune 2. Or
Yeah.
Christopher Walken in Dune 2.
Yeah. But that didn't help because you see them for like a few seconds, so you don't even get adjusted to it.
Right, that was the theory I came up with when I was talking to Daniel about Dune 2. I was like, Christopher Walken is a great actor. And are we saying we don't want to see him in movies because he's distracting, because he's so well known? But I think it's what you just said. The answer is your brain almost needs time to readjust and calibrate to see past the actor and into the character. But if they're only in the movie a little bit, it's kind of like Matt Damon in Interstellar. It feels like a cameo, especially in the age of cameos.
Yeah. Also, though, with Christopher Walken, with a personality and voice that unique, I feel like he can only work in a comedy. You know?
What are we going to do about these Harkonnen?
Yeah. Is he able to turn that off?
I don't know. I think it's just his voice. I don't.
I know.
I mean, I'm sure
but,
as an,
but a lot
I mean,
of it. Yeah.
well,
I was just
actors
gonna say,
put on fake accents.
Exactly,
So if they can do that, they must. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Brad Pitt can do like 10 different accents.
Can he?
Yeah. He was in Snatch. He played. You know?
I don't think you're supposed to. I'm going to bleep that. I don't think you're supposed to say that word anymore.
That's what they call him in the movie.
There's a lot of words they used in movies that. I watched an episode of The Office
All right,
last
everyone
night.
knows what I said.
There was an F word and an R word used in The Office that I don't think you can use anymore. So
Which
I'll tell you
words?
after.
all right.
So I think, Furiosa trailer. There wasn't anything that grabbed me like the Fury Road trailer where I was like, I need to see this. Part of that's because it just doesn't look new at all.
Mm-hmm.
There is stuff in this movie you haven't seen before, and those are some of my favorite parts. But it does very much feel like the same world, the same locations with a couple of new ones.
Yeah.
So I think, and when I talk about like normies versus cinephiles, I don't think it puts people. I don't talk about that in a pompous way. I look at it this way: is that they're probably feeling similar to what we're feeling. I don't feel that excited about the movie. The difference is a normal person will say, well, I don't feel that excited, I'm not going to see it. But I don't feel that excited, but I'm going to go see it anyway because I know it's George Miller. I know he's going to make an awesome movie. And there is some curiosity. And even if I don't feel emotionally moved to go see the movie, I'm going to do it. But if I'm not feeling that, I imagine a lot of people aren't. And that's going to hurt it at the box office. Yes, most people aren't going to override that feeling and just go see it anyway.
Yeah. Which is, I guess they'd rather go out to like the bar or something on like a.
Yeah, I don't know. What do people do?
Like, I would rather go see a movie, even if it's one that isn't going to be like mind blowing.
Yeah, we're
as long
totally
as it's
out of
enjoyable.
touch. Yeah, we're definitely out of touch though, because I also see these polls where it's like people strongly prefer shorter movies, like less than 2 hours. And I'm like, if I see a movie's 2.5 hours long, I get excited.
If it's a movie, a good movie that you're enjoying, why would you not want it to be longer?
Yeah, maybe
That's
people
what I don't get.
Yeah, no, I don't know. For me, the longer the better. Like I love like a
Yeah.
3-hour movie. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be epic.
Yeah.
I also think it doesn't help. Like I said it last night, but I wish that they hadn't made this prequel. I wish that they had made a sequel. Not because that's necessarily what I'd rather see, but I think you've made this into a tougher sell. Like I said, I think Fury Road was an unusual phenomenon. It attracted a lot more attention than you'd expect for a Mad Max movie. But now, not only is it Mad Max, but it's a prequel with a character who's been recast. I think you're adding so many hurdles to get people to go see it, and you're making it very unlikely that we're going to get another Mad Max movie after this.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I am curious about Furiosa's story. Like, I'm not disinterested, but I don't want it coming at the expense of another Mad Max. If they could have like two teams working at them simultaneously, that would be awesome. Like, I would rather both movies than just one of them. But if I only had one, I'd rather a continuation of the story.
Yeah, I wish it was like Ty West when he came out with X, and he's like, by the way, I also filmed a prequel called Pearl. I didn't tell you about it, but it's coming out in like a year.
That's cool.
I wish that George Miller had done that, where he's like, because he's talking about Mad Max: The Wasteland, which would be another prequel. Takes place a year before Fury Road, and it's about what Max was up to. Like, why can't just? I know it's dumb. Like, intellectually, it shouldn't matter, but just for me, knowing it's a prequel, it does something to me where I'm like, well, I know where it goes. And there is a nice feeling, this sense of discovery when you watch a movie and you don't know where it's going. And I know you can do that in a prequel, but there is something inside me that just has that feeling of I know where he's going to be in 1 year. I know where it's going.
Also, don't you feel that when someone's writing a movie, they consciously chose the part of that character's story to start at because they felt that was the most interesting part of their life to tell
Right.
a story about. So why didn't you think of like did no part of you think maybe I should start earlier in his life for this movie? Maybe you thought that and then you were like, that wouldn't be as interesting. Let me start here.
Right.
So by definition, a prequel will be less engaging.
Yeah, it's like Han Solo, and then you end up accidentally recreating the same character arc because it's like Han Solo in Star Wars: A New Hope. He's like a scoundrel, selfish, and then learns to care about the bigger cause and like fight in the rebellion. And then you see Solo, a Star Wars story, takes place decades earlier. It's like he's a scoundrel and he learns to care about the bigger universe. And
Yeah, but you know, at least with the Star Wars, Disney has I don't know if they're still doing it, but they had so many different teams working on so many different Star Wars entities that I don't think any of them were taking away from whatever their plan was for the next mainline Star Wars century. Like, I'm sure that has been getting worked on in some capacity this whole time.
yeah, they can do 10 movies at once.
Yeah. I just wish they were good. That's all.
Yeah. That's the one thing, you know. There's like a few exceptions, right? Like Better Call Saul, amazing prequel.
Yeah.
But part of what that had going for it is that yes, we knew where Saul was in Breaking Bad, but he was a side character. We really knew nothing about him. There was no character development. So you do wonder what can turn somebody into that. And the show is also part sequel. And so just knowing you're eventually going to head there, it kind of corrects for that emotional, even if it's irrational part of you that thinks, well, it's a prequel and that kind of bums me out because we're not going to, it makes you feel like there's a brick wall at the end of the story where there's this artificial limitation of where the story has to end.
Yeah.
So
I think moral of the story is prequels are hard to write, but it is possible if you're good at writing.
I feel that way about just about everything. Is that any concept could work. Some of them are more challenging than others, and some of them maybe they can work, but you might not find an audience because people would just be turned off by the idea.